As our Charlie D'Agata told you on this program last night, the aircraft carrier USS George Washington is en route to the Middle East to replace the USS Abraham Lincoln, where families of some crew members report maintenance problems, supply shortages, and intensifying mental and physical fatigue. The Pentagon admits delays for some typical onboard supplies. It denies undue stresses, physical or mental, for the sailors and Marines aboard. I want to welcome back Charlie, who's got the latest on this. Charlie, what do we know?
Well, help is on the way. As we talked about yesterday, and we got the confirmation, as far as actually rotating out the Abraham Lincoln, not just putting another carrier into that region, that's exactly what it's there for. And it can't come quickly enough because as we have been covering this for the past few days and other media outlets as well, more families have been coming forward, families that we've spoken to about this. So this hasn't really gone away. There have been more problems, issues, exposed mental health issues, which is really what caused a lot of concerns, but also, shortage of basic supplies, plumbing issues, just, the wear and tear, not only of a carrier that's out there for that long, but for the individuals who are responsible for maintaining that carrier. And again, I just want to point out, when we talk about a 9-month deployment, that's long, but a 9-month deployment in a kinetic, a war zone, including more than 200 days without a break, that is what's grinding down some of the personnel.
And Charlie, I talked to you about this last night, but you've been on the Abraham Lincoln. The acting Navy Secretary, Hung Kao, put out a statement today saying that that aircraft carrier had engaged in this deployment in more than 10,000 sorties. Give my audience a sense of what kind of tempo that is and what kind of stress that puts on the material on board and the personnel responsible for making sure those things go off and go off well.
Right. This is a big hulking thing with a lot of moving parts. And you've got aircraft, fighter jets, and these things are running. In order to get those kind of numbers up and that kind of ordnance dropped, that's day and night. And even when I was there, when they weren't even in a fight, they were going, the F-18s were flying off that deck throughout the night. And they weren't even dropping bombs then. That was for surveillance and obviously for force protection. In a kinetic environment like that, where they're dropping bombs, that would be exhausting. Because remember, all of that stuff has to be maintained. As soon as these things come in, and you may have seen some of these images, 30 seconds, they got to move out of the way. The next one goes down, comes in, moves down. Think of that tempo. And they're also worried about coming under attack, which they've had to fend off Iranian drones, missile strikes. They're right at the Strait of Hormuz. So, they're in the lion's den. This isn't just floating around. This is why the intensity, and it's clearly having an effect on morale, at least morale and the exhaustion, if not mental health issues of that crew.
Which the acting Navy Secretary did concede today, that there are disruptions and there are stresses. War is hell, he said, and normal routines are disrupted. Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much.
Thanks, Major.
Later this hour, I will be joined by Connecticut Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, who is seeking more information about conditions and capabilities remaining for the USS Abraham Lincoln. I want to turn now to CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd. Sam, always a pleasure. Your sense of this?
My sense is if we take a step back and look at just how this is being perceived globally, we certainly have the attrition in military assets because of the situation in the Middle East. We have Ukraine basically begging the United States for additional Patriot interceptor missiles. Remember, we're about a year away tomorrow, the 1-year anniversary of President Trump's meeting with Putin in Alaska. And there's just this general sense globally that the United States military is under a historic level of pressure and is really unprepared to not just tread water in this moment, but also to plan ahead and to consider threats, for example, emanating in the Asia-Pacific region. So it is becoming a potential moment of vulnerability for the U.S. more broadly.
Stresses on personnel, stresses on munitions, and stresses on preparedness.
Certainly, and we're embroiled in the Middle East. We have had drone attacks against 2 Emirati tankers in the Strait of Hormuz a few hours ago. We have this really difficult situation on the tanker, and we are just literally facing a critical shortage of Patriot interceptor missiles that are critical to defend our allies like Ukraine, but also to defend Americans. As this war in the Middle East continues, Iran's strategy might become similar to Russia's. Russia's strategy in Ukraine 4 years in is to really degrade Ukrainian air defenses, to just fire so many missiles that Ukraine runs out of interceptors. in the Middle East, we have so many personnel, so many bases. It sure looks like Iran's strategy may be to try to fire so many that we just can't defend our own personnel anymore.
To that point, Charlie, you're still here, and I'm glad you are. There was reporting in the Wall Street Journal about the United States military and Ukraine going through an exercise with drones, and the Ukrainians, as I read the story, sort of running the table.
Oh, they routed them. They routed
the United States forces.
Absolutely. It wasn't even close. And they did it quickly.
Why does that matter?
Well, it exposed the weaknesses in especially drone defenses. If you send in the armored division in a sort of traditional style, they are prone to Ukrainian strikes or drone strikes. And the Ukrainians have learned this over the years of fighting these battlefields. But at the same time, the Americans have been there with the Ukrainians in Germany learning Russian tactics, right? So it was
better to learn this now, is what I hear you saying.
Indeed, and I also have to. There's one caveat here that this wasn't sort of the A-team, because as this is going forward, they are developing a sort of rapid reaction force specifically to deal with drones, and that wasn't part of that. Yes, that wasn't the sort of the front line, because that's still under development right now, but it's an entirely different unit. But they were burning.
All respect to those who were participating in kind of a B team.
In a manner of speaking, yes. Yeah.
No offense, please.
No. And they didn't put their most advanced stuff forward because they wanted to see what reality would look like now, not what they're preparing for, but if it were to happen now. And it showed that these mechanized divisions are vulnerable. They were burning through it so quickly that they had to resupply in order to keep the exercise going. And toward the end of the exercise, the Ukrainians switched teams and helped out the Americans in order for them to develop some kind of defense about what was coming after.
Sam, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to summarize your thoughts on this.
Military pressure, we're talking about that, but there are economic tools that the administration is focused on. So Secretary Bessent has said that the administration is going to unveil new economic sanctions to cripple the Iranian regime. We'll see if those target countries like China, who continue to import Iranian oil. And certainly the Senator Graham Russia sanctions bill is going to go before the House when they get back at the end of the month. Done, and that could be significant as well.
Sam Vinograd, Charlie D'Agata, great to have you here. Awesome stuff. And joining us now is CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cordes from the North Lawn of the White House. Nancy, what do you have on this particular topic that we've been kicking about here for the last 5 or 6 minutes?
Well, President Trump actually had a lot to say about the Iran war when he was speaking at a rally in Long Island a short time ago, Major. He argued that the blockade, the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports, has been unstoppable. He described it as a wall of steel, although, of course, it should be pointed out that the whole goal of that blockade is to impose so much economic pain on Iran because it can't get its oil to market, that Iran then gives up and reopens the Strait of Hormuz. And so far, that hasn't happened. The president also, interestingly, acknowledged that people on Long Island and all across this country are paying more for gas than they were 6 months or a year ago. But he argued that it has all been worth it, that he is doing the nation a service, in fact, doing the entire world a service by demolishing Iran's military and by attempting to rid Iran of its nuclear ambitions, though it should be pointed out that there, too, he has faced an uphill battle and hasn't been able to strike a nuclear deal with the Iranians yet.
And Nancy, I want to ask you about something Vice President J.D. Vance told Fox News. Quote, goal number one for the administration right now, the vice president said, is to keep oil and gas prices down. He said the second goal is to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. That sounds like a shift, a pretty sizable one in emphasis.
Yeah, he's actually all week long been saying things that seem to indicate that the goal of ridding Iran of its nuclear ambitions is proving to be far more difficult than President Trump initially sought. Earlier in the week, he said that, they're looking to see if Iran wants to have good relations with the United States as they try to strike a deal. And if not, that's okay. Well, that's a big change from President Trump's assertion at the very start of this war that the whole reason that they were doing this, goal number one, was to get rid of Iran's nuclear program for good. And it is an acknowledgement that as we near the 6-month mark of this conflict, they really don't appear outwardly to be much closer to striking a nuclear deal with Iran than they were months ago.
For the latest from the White House, Nancy Cordes, as always, thank you so much.